and Tiananmen doesn't get enough exposure. We're going to go into the reasons, I think, for that. But, folks, I will tell you, if you look, particularly, let's say, post-World War II, and maybe including World War II, you have never seen the outright brutality on unarmed people. Guns are not allowed in China. The Chinese in that square, the young students and people just come together, these massive crowds, were totally and completely unarmed. And they were gunned down. And the casualty rates have always been suppressed. I remember Miles Guo told me he thought it was 50,000 just in Beijing alone and throughout the country, because virtually every major city had an uprising. And on the cusp, the Chinese Communist Party actually stared into the abyss on those couple of days. Forrest, today we're going to get into why it's not promulgated more in China, but Tiananmen and what led up to it. Today, what does Tiananmen mean if you're in mainland China today, particularly walking across that really magnificent square right there by the Forbidden City? What does it mean for people in mainland China today, and what does it mean for those that are expatriates, sir?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having us. June 4th, 1989, that's the first time for a lot of Chinese people openly challenged the Chinese Communist Party. In the spring of that year, millions of students, workers, and professors going on the street demanding for the political reform, asking for ending the corruption, and also ask for the freedom of expression. Every people standing peacefully on the street asking for freedom and democracy. But you have witnessed, and everybody witnessed, that the CCP ordered the PLA turn the guns and tanks towards the unarmed citizens. That reminds us how brutal those regime is to use the power to kill people to preserve their power. To Chinese people, up to today, June 4th is a very most prohibited topic. If you mention it on the social media or in your chat, on WeChat, you could be arrested, you could be put in prison, or even worse. That's a taboo in China. Why? Because the Chinese Communist Party want to erase this memory, this event. They don't want people to know the past. But for Chinese people, that's the courage for Chinese people. That's the fire of Chinese people asking for freedom and democracy. But of course, that massacre also shattered a generation's dream for peacefully reform. And after that, also the Chinese Communist Party learned from that massacre, and they start more tightly controlled media and censorship and surveillance. They combined with economic reform and controlled the people more tightly. That's what means to the Chinese people. Every single Chinese people is under surveillance and censorship, and they don't have a freedom. They have no freedom of religion, and they have no freedom of speech. So for the Chinese people, that means a lot. And also, I would like to talk about what that means to the free world. First of all, that's the fork of the history. Because in 1989, Berlin Wall was falling, and the East European just breaking from the communists. But the June 4th massacre ensured the CCP's survival and make them the next superpower, which posed a lot of threat to the freedom world today. And also from that event, the CCP has learned their tricks. They know how to hide the truth, because when they hide the truth, they can use the brutal force. They can attack the freedom country. So they basically evolved themselves to a much more sophisticated attack. That's what we are facing today, the unrestricted warfare. So for Chinese people, that day is very tragic. But for the free world, that day it's a warning for the past and for the present. Because to be honest, what is playing out today in the US is exactly what happened to the Chinese student back 36 years ago. Back then, the student think they can trust the CCP. They are young, have no experience, full of hope, maybe a little bit naive. They trust the CCP to negotiate with them, but the CCP used their technique basically stalling the protest. But at the back, they are prepared for the cracking down and for the tanks and the guns. When the time comes, they roll the tank and kill the thousands of students, innocent, unarmed people. So what happens in this country now? Let's fast forward to 2019 and 2020, when first term Trump term negotiated with CCP, hoping to get a deal. But actually, we did get a deal, and we even signed a deal with Liu He. But what happened? COVID-19 hit. And then Trump lost the election in 2020. So you see, that's exactly the same strategy and technique the CCP used to against and to attack the West country and the people who has the faith, good faith, trust CCP. But the CCP is so evil. If they can slaughter their own people to keep their power, you can imagine what they can do to the Western and American people. That's what exactly they did. So right now, I think President Trump still wishes to talk with CCP to get a deal. But the CCP is using their controlled media, the propaganda, to go after the administration, to go after Mr. Trump, and to tell them the tariff is so tough for the Chinese people, and the Chinese people is the victim. Yes, the Chinese people are the victims, but they are the victims of Chinese Communist Party, not American. The American just put their measure to counter Chinese Communist Party to make sure to protect their own citizen. So that tells you the CCP used these techniques to delay, to deceive the Western country, to gain time to prepare for the next attack. You can bet the next movement after like 1 year during the midterm, they will use their propaganda, they will their influence, political influence to interfere with the midterm election. And the next will be the 2028 election. That's how they plan to defeat this country, to defeat Mr. Trump. That's why, Steve, this show and your War Room policy is so important to the world and to the Chinese people, because you know Chinese Communist Party. You know their tactics. You know their secret. You can tell the people what they are planning. And you are awakening the American people to take the action. So that's what means for us. We have to put our action together to move fast to taking down the Chinese Communist Party. Today marks 36th anniversary for that massacre. We're not only here to memorize all those people who sacrificed for the democracy and the freedom, but we are here to awaken the American people and the people to take action to taking down the Chinese Communist Party once for all.